Good evening, everyone. It's Friday the 13th, 2026. And I'd done a little show earlier today where I went on a little rant and chased a few rabbits, but I had promised that I was going to come back and talk about Donald Trump. And I don't even really know what to call this episode, but I just kind of feel like, it's like Donald Trump. Is there reasonable doubt, or do you have to stretch your imagination to think that maybe he's guilty of some of the same things that Jeffrey Epstein was accused of, and he's in the file 38,000 times? But I just wanted to bring a little bit to people that they might not hear on Fox News or Newsmax or some of this real far-right MAGA-leaning news media or podcasts. So kind of wanted to go over a few things, and you can't really judge a book by its cover. You have to get inside, read the book, see what's going on, to try to understand what's really going on. So if here was going to be a court trial and they were going to bring Donald Trump up on charges and try to accuse him of some of the things that his name was probably redacted from, and you had to listen to some witness testimony and some things like that, then, you might have to look at a person's character, and you might have to look at their life and see the things that they've done in life and see if they're of good moral character, or if they've done things in the past that kind of lines up with the current crime they're being charged with. Like if a guy was being charged with burglary and you'd looked in his past and he'd been accused of burglarizing a car dealership, burglarizing an auto parts store, burglarizing the church, and doing things like that, it wouldn't be a real stretch of the imagination to think that he would have burglarized something. So, a lot of times in a court trial they'll have the sentencing phase where they're going to hand down the sentence for whatever they were convicted of. And then everyone comes in and they start talking, and they're like, well, the guy, he did this for his community, and he did that for his community, and he helped the poor, and he did this, and he donated money to charity, and he did these good things, and so they're trying to get the judge to go lenient on him. Well, I don't know. If you look at the past life of Donald Trump, or as Pam Bondi says, Donald Trump, then he doesn't have much of a leg to stand on, really. I mean, there's not a lot of good moral conduct there. And if you look at the allegations in the past and some of the things that he's been charged with, accused of, or whatever, it kind of lines up, kind of fits, It it wouldn't be a stretch of the imagination to think that birds of a feather flock together, So, that's what I wanted to talk about today, and I said I was going to bring this, so here we go. I think there's a lot of things that people haven't heard, but if you're a little older and you've been around and you have any kind of memory, you'll remember, back in the day, this happened or that happened, and it was kind of scandalous or whatever. And there's too many things to mention, but I'm just going to hit on the main points that are kind of just out there that's easily accessible if you want to go Google it. But in 1970, he was accused of discrimination against renters of his, like him and his dad had apartments and things there in New York City that had their name on it. And he didn't want any people of color living in those buildings that had his name on it. So he was discriminating against, the black renters and didn't want them there. And then in the 1980s is when, some of the sexual misconduct allegations began. In September of 2005, he was caught on tape. And I'm sure a lot of people have heard it, And even Megyn Kelly on Fox years ago, when there was a debate, even mentioned this fact that, he was caught on a hot mic on a tape advocating that you can just grab women by the pussies, you know. In April of 2018, he was accused of raping a 13-year-old girl. In October of 2016, a journalist accused Trump of assaulting her at Mar-a-Lago. And then in June, I think it was around June 21st or something of 2019, E. Jean Carroll accused Trump of raping her in a department store. So, you know, there's some allegations there, and you know, if you look at that kind of conduct, I mean, if someone was accused of something, and I gotta say this, like, you know, like people that are influential or have money or influencers or things like that, it's, you know, sometimes they can be a target of false accusations, because sometimes people with a lot of money, it's easier for them to just pay somebody off than to deal with it in the you know, public opinion, you know, to, you know, be tried by the public, you know. So they just try to pay these people off, like, oh, he slept with a porn star, I'm just going to give her some hush money, make her shut up, so that she don't come out and say a bunch of things and it makes me look bad in the court of public opinion. So, you know, so you have to say, you know, that does happen. So if you were accused of something once or twice or something, you know, you could maybe even go, well, you know, that happens to people that are, you know, influencing people with money, you know. But when things like that just continue to happen, and it continues to happen, and you're hanging out with people that are known predators, that it is an absolute that they're pedophile and like a sexual assaulter or whatever, SA or whatever. I don't know what you can say here on YouTube. They'll take my video down, but you know what I mean. So it's like, when you're hanging out with somebody that's known to do that, they've been convicted of it, and then you have those allegations in your past before it even comes to light when you're hanging out with this person, but even the whole time you were hanging out, you know. And then you have to go deeper than that, and you can look at the fact that, you know, what does a 50-something-year-old man want with a little teeny pageant where little young girls, you have them parade around in little, you know, swimsuits like bikinis and things like that, and you're going to judge them, and you know, then it's been alleged that, and he even admitted it, I think, on the Howard Stern show, that he could just walk right in there when they were changing and they were naked and walk around and get pictures with them and stuff, because when you own the pageants, you can just do whatever you want. Sound familiar? When you have influence and power, you can just grab them by the pussies, right? So, I mean, and that's what I wanted to lay out, is the fact that, you know, do you really have to stretch your imagination that far to believe that maybe he was involved in this? Maybe he was a part of it. Maybe he's just as guilty as Jeffrey Epstein. What if he was the one that was behind all of this, and Jeffrey Epstein was the scapegoat, or the one that got thrown under the bus? You know, maybe Jeffrey Epstein did have little girls and have videos and stuff like that, but who supplied him the girls? Maybe they come from Trump's pageant. Maybe they come from Slovenia or Russia or something because of Melania. It's hard to say. And I mean, I'm not making accusations, but I mean, is it a conspiracy theory? Is it not? And like, if someone come up here and told me, hey, the church burned down, and they think Bob burned the church down, and I was sitting there thinking, well, no, Bob's not like that. Bob's got good moral character, and he doesn't do that, and, you know, he's always been a nice guy, seems pretty straight up to me. He's kind of a quiet guy, but he's the first one to show up and help him, give you a helping hand and stuff like this, and, you know, he's helped me do a lot of things. He's always been there for me in my time of need. He's always there for people. He just doesn't seem like that kind of person. I don't know why he'd burn the church down. But now if they come up and told me, hey, we think Bob might have burned the church down, and I was thinking, well, yeah, he's been in trouble before, been accused of setting fires. He set somebody's barn on fire, or they think he did, and he was accused of it. He paid the guy a bunch of money for his barn so that he could stay out of jail, and then, You know, he was walking through Walmart and the store caught on fire back there. They had him on camera in the area, and he was the last one in that area and had a big lighter in his hand. You know, so maybe, you know, hey, the chances are it's not a stretch of the imagination to think that Bob might have set the church on fire, you know. So, you know, that's what you have to look at. You have to use your head for something other than a red hat, you know, to figure this out. Now, there's no one with a red hat that's going to go, oh, well, you know, he's guilty of anything. You know, he can do something right in front of them, and they're going to support him. It doesn't matter. He's going to have his base, his 26 or 28 or 30% that's going to support him all the way to prison, if that's what it took. And then they'd be wanting to go in there and break into the prison and break him out, because he's got some of those people that he's brainwashed, and they were easy to brainwash, and they're just those people, you know. So that's kind of where we're at on this deal. But it's hard to believe that he's been back in office for a whole year here, and he seems to be obsessed with commanding things, you know, like he was a reality star once, and once you're a reality star, you're kind of always wanting to be a reality star. And so he's always got to be doing something that attracts attention to him, where he can get in front of the news media, you know, sending the old wife's Gestapo thug agents into states, you know, that voted against him, or that are not, you know, MAGA states, that are blue states, you know. And and he doesn't show any signs of, like, ending this fucking chaos, you know. That's kind of where we're at. But outside of the vastly consequential decisions, the 79-year-old Donald Trump and his critics they're quick to point out that Trump is the first twice impeached president with a criminal conviction on his name. And they're calling for him to be impeached a third time. And it could be theoretically possible if the Republicans lose here in the midterms coming up in November. But besides the 2 impeachments, he has 34 felony convictions. He's had bankruptcy 6 times. And he's had all these allegations, from raping a teenager in 1994 to rigging the 2016 elections, you know. And then inciting the January 6th riots. So that's why I just kind of wanted to look and see, you know, kind of like lay out kind of a history of this man that people have selected to be the president, you know, overwhelmingly. And, you know, when they say overwhelmingly, I don't see it that way, because, like, let's say he got 84 million votes or 86 million votes. There was like 79 or 80 million votes for Kamala or Joe Biden, or whoever you want to say. Joe Biden backed down, Kamala got the votes. But, man, there's 350 million people in America. So if you take out 160 million, you still have 190 million people that didn't vote one way or another. They might have voted for him, or they might not have. So you can't say that he received the overwhelming support. He received the majority of the votes for the people that actually went and voted. If everybody had voted, it might have turned out different. If everybody exercised their right to vote, their God-given right, which I think it's a duty. I think people fought and died to do it. And to be a real patriotic person, you should get out there and exercise that, because people had to give up. They shed blood, tears, sweat, protested, did everything to make it possible for blacks to vote, women to vote, and have free and fair elections. So I think it's a civic duty. You know, in other countries like Venezuela and places like that, people are forced to vote. They have to get out and vote. And everybody that's of age to vote has to get out and cast a ballot. It's like they're forced to go and do their civic duty. And like if they don't, people are kind of hard with them, you know. But I think it's almost a forced thing that they have to go do that. But I wanted to look and see what he's actually been accused of and convicted of over all these years. So, if you've watched like the Trump-based films, like The Apprentice, things like that, then you'll be familiar with the story, you know. Back in 1973, when Trump was simply known for his endeavors in the New York real estate market, rather than dividing countries and nations and all that crap, he before he was trashing our reputation as the United States and all that, he was sued by the Department of Justice, along with his father, Fred Trump, for discriminating against black voters. They wanted to rent in the buildings that he owned. The case was settled in 1975 with no admission of guilt, but Trump was required to sign a document agreeing to change his rental practices because he had some really racist rental policies. You know, he wouldn't rent to anyone of color, like people of color and things like that. So, you know, that's kind of how that deal went down. So he managed to weasel out of it without admitting any guilt. But I mean, it was blatant racism, and you can look at it. His dad was a blatant racist. So, you know, usually, however a parent is, the children usually follow. And that's not all cases, and I'm not saying that, but I'm like, if you're raised a certain way and you hear your grandpa and your dad and all them talking a certain way, you're going to grow up talking the same way, you know. So, but in 1980 is when the sexual misconduct allegations began. And over the years, more than 24 women have gone on record to accuse Trump of predatory and inappropriate behavior towards them, ranging from groping to rape, dating as far back as the 1980s and spanning right up until the mid-2000s. Those who have accused Trump of wrongdoing range from a woman who says she was just a teenager at the time of being violently raped by Trump, and then the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, all the way up till now. And Jeffrey Epstein told a journalist who says she was assaulted. There was a journalist that said she was assaulted. I got sidetracked with you. It's kind of hard to do this when you got some things going on. But anyway, there was a journalist who said she was assaulted while interviewing the Trumps at the Trumps' home in Mar-a-Lago in 2005. And that's when Trump's wife, Melania, was pregnant with their son, Barrett. In papers relating to their divorce, Trump's first wife, Ivana Trump, also accused the president of rape, something that she later retracted in a statement saying, "As a woman, I felt violated, as the love and tenderness which is normally exhibited towards me was absent." So she kind of tried to downplay it, but before she was saying, "Oh, you raped me," which, you know, I'm sure the guy he's like, "Oh, you can't rape your wife," you know. But yes, you can. If she's not a willing participant and you force yourself on her, that's rape. So, and she basically said she referred to it as a rape, but she doesn't want her words to be interpreted in a little or like a literal criminal sense. And he's always denied it. You know, Trump's always denied it. In September 2005, Trump is, you know, caught on tape advocating that you could just grab women by the pussies. So, you know, I'm pretty sure people have heard that, because I've even heard some of that on the right-leaning news, you know. Like I say, even Megyn Kelly, when she was doing the debate and she was up there asking questions. She read that and says, hey, you were heard saying this, and like, you've always had a bad way towards women. And then he come out and said, oh, she was just bleeding or something out of everywhere or something, and he made nasty comments towards Megyn Kelly. But he says, basically when you're a star, you can do anything. You can grab them by the pussies. You can do anything. And a lot of people liken it to Trump encouraging and or admitting sexual assault. And the tape was used as evidence in one of the trials against E. Jean Carroll in October of 2022. In 2016, Trump is accused of raping a 13-year-old girl. In one allegation, a woman known only by the pseudonym Katie Johnson accused Trump and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein of raping her when she was just 13 years old back in 1994. In a formal declaration, Johnson wrote, immediately following this rape, defendant Trump threatened me that if I were ever to reveal any of the details of Trump's sexual and physical abuse of me, my family and I would be physically harmed, if not killed. Trump's lawyers labeled the allegations as categorically untrue and frivolous. Additionally, the case was dismissed. It was refiled in September of that same year, but the lawsuit was withdrawn by Johnson 2 months later. She also pulled out of the public appearance shortly beforehand, saying she feared for her safety. And then on October 2016, a journalist accused Trump of assaulting her in Mar-a-Lago. Journalist Natasha Stoynoff claims she was assaulted by Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate, at Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate, by him while working as a reporter for People magazine in 2005. She had been sent to Trump's Florida home to cover his wedding anniversary with the then pregnant Melania. During the house tour, Stoynoff alleges Trump forcibly kissed her and only stopped when a staff member entered the room. Trump shut the door behind us. I turned around and within seconds, he was pushing me against the wall and forcing his tongue down my throat. Stoynoff said in a 2016 essay for People about the apparent incident. A Trump spokeswoman responded to this article by saying this never happened. In October of 2016, Stormy Daniels is paid hush money. Adult entertainer Stormy Daniels is paid $130,000 by Trump's then lawyer Michael Cohen in order to keep quiet about having slept with Trump, something he denies happened. Apparently, this was due to fears that the story broke it could harm Trump's reputation and his first bid for the White House. Trump has always denied knowledge of Daniels receiving such a payment at the hands of Cohen, who then claims he acted very much under Trump's instructions. So, when he was going to run for office the first time, he's trying to shut all this stuff down, and he's paying hush money because he doesn't want that to get out, because if that got out, people would be looking bad at him, and we might not have had to deal with him the first time had it got out. So, and then since then, Michael Cohen's went to jail for misappropriating campaign funds because I guess he used campaign money to pay her, but then Trump wrote a check to pay back the campaign or something, but it was a misappropriation or something of campaign funds. I don't remember the exact details, so don't quote me on it. I might be telling it wrong, but that's kind of basically it. And then since then, Michael Cohen hadn't had nothing nice to say about it. He basically went to jail for him for saving his ass. And then, following accusations that Trump's 2016 election campaign involved illegally conspiring with Russian agents, former FBI investigator Robert Mueller spent almost 2 years investigating any possible wrongdoings. Mueller's team was unable to find enough evidence to prove Trump's team directly colluded with Russia, but it ascertained that Russia did interfere with the first U.S. election that Trump won by spreading mis- and disinformation online. Some of Trump's known associates, such as Paul Manafort and Roger Stone, were ultimately convicted, but Trump was not. He denied again any wrongdoing. He's good about doing that. In April of 2018, Trump had started a university, and in 2018 April, it was found to be a sham. Between 2005 and 2010, Trump ran a costly course promising to help real estate hopefuls break into the business, something he called Trump University. Only its false promises of success proved a total flop. In 2018, a judge ruled that Trump must pay out $25 million as part of a settlement that saw students get part of their money back. They didn't even get all their money back. He's never had to be held hardly accountable for anything. ABC reported that New York Attorney General Eric T. Schneiderman said of the case, Judge Curiel's order finalizing the $25 million Trump University settlement means victims of Donald Trump's fraudulent university will finally receive the relief they deserve. This settlement marked a stunning reversal by President Trump, who for years refused to compensate the victims of his sham university. My office won't hesitate to hold those who commit fraud accountable, no matter how rich or powerful they are to be. Again, this case was settled without any admission of wrongdoing on Trump's part, and Trump Organization spokesman at the time said there was no doubt Trump University would prevail if the case had gone to trial, but his reputation, but a resolution of these matters was the top priority, so Trump could focus on his role as president of the United States. So, if you see a pattern of he's accused, he denies it, he buys his way out of it. He's accused, he denies it, he buys his way out of it. Do you see a pattern? He never admits any wrongdoing, slings a little money around to make it go away. Wouldn't it be fortunate if everyone could do that? Like I could do that and get by with it. Not that I would do anything bad and want to get by with it, but that just seems to be the way it is. And June 21st of 2019, E.G. Carroll accuses Trump of raping her in a department store. In the article for New York Magazine, former ELLE columnist E.G. Carroll claimed Trump raped her in the spring of 1996 while she was working in a plush department store, Bergdorf Goodman. As a part of the powerful imaginary accompanying the article, Carroll wore the same all-black outfit she says she was dressed in the day of the alleged rape. She also discussed the incident in her book, What Do We Need Men For? What do we need men for? Trump denies the rape ever occurred and said Carroll's story was fake, like the author. But I think he was forced to pay her money because in civil court they found that she had, a credible story. So, I don't know. But there you go again, he denied it. Deny. know. And now I've watched him for a year, and everything that comes out of his mouth is a lie. So if he's denying it, it's probably true because he don't know how to tell the truth. So, you know, that's kind of the way I lead. But, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm biased. Maybe I got TDS. Anybody that's watched this moron for a year should have TDS if they have a brain, because it should wear them out that this moron's fuck, dude, doing what he's doing. It should give him TDS. But then, anyway, on December 18th of 2019, Trump was impeached for the first time, charged with abuse of power and obstruction of Congress after being accused of pressuring Ukraine to launch an investigation into his political rival, Joe Biden, and his family, and by threatening to withhold military aid. The House of Representatives impeached Trump in December 2019. However, the Senate, which had a Republican majority, voted to acquit him in February 2020. So his little MAGA Republicans came to his aid. November 20th, January through January 2021, Trump tries to overthrow the 2020 elections. After losing to Biden, and we all know, no matter what they say on the right, there's been 300 and something court cases where they made them recount the ballots. They did investigations on the state levels and never found any fraud whatsoever. And he still, just the other day, went down and sent the FBI in there to raid down there in Georgia and take all their ballots and the ballot information and all the people's voter information. And that's what they did. They went in there with a bullshit warrant and gathered all that shit up. So, you know, when I feel like that he's working towards trying to figure out a way to trample up some evidence and say the elections are unfair where he can rig the fucking midterms, because if he can rig the midterms and cheat that motherfucker, then they won't lose, because he knows they're going to get their ass handed to him come the midterms for all the dumb shit he's done, because people see through his stupid shit now. Anyway, that's my little rant about that. But anyway, after losing to Biden, Trump and his team repeated false information and claimed he lost due to voter fraud. He also tried to coerce Republican state officials into throwing out legitimate results, as they weren't to his liking, because he lost. He don't like to lose. So this, along with plenty of fiery social media commentary, resulted in a group of diehard Trump supporters descending onto the Capitol on January 6, 2021, and rioting, resulting in the death of police officers who were assaulted, and rioters and Trump supporters, and a Trump supporter who was shot by the authorities. A handful of officers who responded to the riots also ended their own lives within a year of this event due to the trauma that followed. So, I don't know, which is messed up, but so he was impeached again for the Capitol riots. Now, I mean, everybody's up to par now, and we're getting into this particular decade. So most people have seen things on the news, and here we are. You know, is it real? Is it not real? Is it misinformation? Is it not? You know, there's a lot of AI bullshit, a lot of lies and shit that goes out. People believe it or they don't. But May of 2021, Trump is asked about missing classified documents. Now, this is where it gets real now. After all these things and these terrible things he was accused of, I want you to think about this. No one has made this connection, but I'm going to make it. And I haven't heard anyone. I've listened to a bunch of different podcasts, I've listened to the news, but no one has made this connection. Now, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein commits suicide August 10th. Okay, August 9th, whatever. I heard there was a mess with I've heard that the autopsy report said it didn't look like suicide. I've heard a lot of different things. No evidence of that. Just people talk of people saying his own brother went on a podcast. I listened to it. He seems to think something wasn't right. Dr. Michael Bodden, who is has done more autopsies than anybody in the world, said it didn't look to him like a suicide. I'm going to lean towards Dr. Michael Bodden's probably right. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But Jeffrey Epstein's either killed or committed suicide, or maybe he's in exile on an island somewhere else and they saved him from spending the rest of his life in prison and broke him the fuck out of there and pretended he died. I don't know, dude. There's a lot of conspiracy theories. I don't know, people can say what they want. Now, what I'm going to spin here is, I don't know if this would be a conspiracy theory or if maybe there's some truth to it. But they said that there was some missing classified documents, okay? And it's reported that in May of 2021, U.S. National Archives and Records Administration contacted Trump's legal firm, alerting them to the fact that 2 boxes of classified documents had gone AWOL following his departure from the White House. Then they went and raided his home, and he got all mad. When they raided his home, there were 15 boxes of unauthorized materials were found in his possession. And in January of 2022, the FBI continued an investigation that culminated in a raid at Mar-a-Lago on August 8, 2022. Many more classified documents were unearthed. Then in spring of 23, E. Jean Carroll won her case. But now we're going to go back to the classified documents here, okay? So, the classified documents were some that were missing, but they found others. Now, we all know, if you got a brain, you've paid any attention to the Epstein deal. He filmed everything. He had cameras everywhere. There wasn't very much that wasn't documented. He had hard drives, videos, all this evidence, pictures, all these things. Now, when they raided his house and all this and took all this, you got all these files that they're redacting and everything. But I wonder, when the FBI raided at Mar-a-Lago and they took all that stuff and they confiscated that stuff, how much of it did they actually get back? And were there some Epstein files that were Department of Justice Epstein files that were taken too? And maybe he had them and he destroyed some of them, changed the outcome of what some of them said, did some shady shit with them and whatever to protect his ass, because he knew. And when you're that close to something and they raid a guy's fucking house and they come in and take that shit, and he knew how he was, he had cameras everywhere, he filmed everything, he used that shit for blackmail, whether he was a Mossad agent, whether he was CIA, whatever the fuck. He was on point with making lots of money, and I think a lot of it was made through blackmail and things like that. So if that's the case, if I was best friends with him but I was involved in some of that shit, let's just say, for instance, as a scenario, and the fucking FBI raided his fucking house and took all this stuff into evidence, I'd be shitting fucking bricks, wouldn't I? When I, as a president, the highest executive official in the United States, he would have access to that more than anybody else would. Just about it. He could go, hey, bring me this, bring me that. Hey, I'm going in here and look at this, look at that. And he can say, hey, take this, take that. When he left office, how did you take these and take those? And they load shit up and he leaves office with it. And, maybe he hauled it out there because he knew he had to at that point, because they had to do a transition of power because he lost the elections. Now, had he not lost the elections, he would have had plenty of time to go through that, shut down the DOJ from investigating anything or mentioning him, and he'd had time to clean up those files and redact those files and do all that stuff. But he had to hurry up and pack her up and get on Marine One and get out of town because Joe Biden was coming in. So it's like, oh, I need those and I need those. Oh, yeah, those are mine. Load those boxes up. And so they fly away, go to Mar-a-Lago, and go in the closet. There they are. And that's just a theory that I have. You know, it's not beyond the stretch of imagination that something like that could happen. And I wonder what those files actually was. Some of them may have been classified military files, or you know, national security files. But at the same time, I wonder if some of them were Epstein files, videos, evidence that would have put him under the jail. You know, so that's something really to think about. But you know, I'm going to try to bring this thing home here. You know, this is something that I wanted to talk about, but he was charged with 37 counts relating to classified documents. Then he was charged with trying to overturn the Georgia election. And then he's found guilty on 34 counts of fraud. You know, I'm trying to get through this pretty quick and kind of get on through this so I don't have a 2-hour long episode here, but he received an unconditional discharge of his 34 counts of fraud, which essentially means while he's guilty, still guilty in the eyes of the law, and he has a conviction on his name, he's avoided going to jail. Now, what fucking bullshit is that? Who gets 34 felonies and doesn't go to jail? Even if they carried a year apiece and they stacked them and run them concurrently, you'd have to do at least 1 year in jail. That's horseshit, bro. I think they should have delayed his entry into jail till he got out of office, and he had to face the same music that anyone else that was convicted of a felony. In fact, if you got one felony, you might get probation. But if you had 34, bro, you're going to jail. It don't matter who you are, except for Donald Trump. And of course, he denied he did anything wrong, like always, you know. So January 2025, this litigation widens and the battle is unfolding. And it's been going on into now, early 2026. He still continues to face all kinds of legal problems on several fronts. Not just over his New York conviction, he's trying to appeal the guilty conviction with the hush money case.